Right, well, good evening, everybody. Hopefully you are tuning in for the Bishop's Arts and Humanities webinar for Year 12 tonight. I'll apologise for my appearance. I've just arrived back from a slightly rainy Isle of Wight geology field trip. So if you could see my bottom half, I'm covered with clay, but on the top half, I'm relatively clean. So hopefully that will not matter. My name's Dr Smallwood. I'm the head at Bishop's. We hope that you find this, a good evening, an informative evening. We're going to be speaking in roughly this order. I'll tell you a little bit about Bishop's and talk a little bit about decision making. I'll then hand on to Zoe Lambard, who's head of sixth form. We'll talk a little bit more about what goes on in the sixth form, and then Sally Armstrong, our careers advisor, consultant, will handle the rest of the evening. And of course there'll be lots of heads of department here who will arrive in their serried ranks to talk to you about their subjects. This is only one part of the kind of finding out bit for you as you consider where to go in year 12. There is a big open evening on the 2nd of November, which I'm sure you get the details of later on, and that's in the prospectus and on the website. And of course, there are lots of open sessions too, including one tomorrow morning, I think, bright and early at 10 o'clock here at Bishop's. And I guess that's one thing I should say. Wherever you go, you should visit and you should talk to current students, because they will tell you what it's like. And as you know, subjects are important, heads of department are very important people, but actually day-to-day life is a really important part of your sixth form years, wherever you choose to spend them. So some things about Bishop's generally and the decision that you've got to make, and then I'll go on to talk about the bit of information that's appeared at the top of your screen. You've got a view of number 11, the Close, in front of you, which is part of the school, glorious in summer sunshine, which is great. But that's just one aspect of the school, of course. If you've seen the slide that appeared just shortly before, and also the front of the prospectus, you'll have seen some of our wonderful Year 13 students on there. And they are our ambassadors, and no doubt you will meet some of our sixth form students if you come to our open session tomorrow. So making your decision, how do you decide where to go? Well, the fit has to be good for you. It has to be good for you personally, not your parents, not someone like me, not your careers consultant or your teachers or anyone else, or especially not your friends. It has to be good for you, because you have to be happy during your sixth form years. You have to feel that you've made that right choice, not just when the sun's shining in September, but also on a rainy November evening when you've got lots of deadlines to meet, because then you will be tested. Your determination and grit will be tested, and you want to be confident that you've made the right choice. Some things that make us different to other places: we are much smaller than a sixth form college. So we have 400 students in our sixth form here at Bishop's. So we took just under 200 into year 12 this last September. That means that we have a big sixth form, but it's part of a school. It's not just that narrow age range that you get in a further education college, though there are lots of very good colleges around. We offer a packed programme with lots of pastoral support. You will know that if you've been to an open session already, if you've read the prospectus. It's not like a college in that way. We really do get to know our students because there are fewer of them. And also our students have a dress code. They arrive at school looking smart, as if they were coming into a place of business. And we feel that's important. And it really does send a very strong signal from us. And the signpost says this: if you come to us, you are going to have a lot of fun over these next 2 years, really exciting time, but also there is a serious side to life, because our students come to us because of the quality of what we offer, and we expect a lot of them in their turn, and that dress code sends that signal that it's important that we all work together and treat life a little bit more seriously, because unless we do that, then you will not get to where you want to go. So now the information on your screen, I'll just dwell a little bit more on that, because it's another signpost for you to help you in making your decision as to whether Bishops is a good fit for you or not. There is a big number on your screen. It's a percentage of A star to B at A level. That number is always big, year in, year out. And in actual fact, it doesn't matter what that number is, as long as it is high enough to guarantee that our students have really superb onward destinations. That's certainly true here. So taking last summer as an example, 20 of our students, that's about 10% of them, went on to get places at Oxford and Cambridge. 15 of our students have just started their places in medical school from year 13 from last summer. Around about 70% of our students enter into Russell Group universities. They're the best 20 or so universities in the country. That doesn't happen by accident. We aim to make that happen. We ask our students, what do you want to do and how do you want to get there? And then we work at them to make those dreams come true for them. There's the point about the fit for you personally again. It has to be right. You have to feel comfortable and happy that you have made the right choice for those sixth form years, because they're very brief, and it is hugely important that you make sure that you make the correct choice for you. That's probably about enough time from me now, so I'll hand over to Zoe Lambard to talk a little bit more about life in the sixth form. Zoe, the floor's yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk, hold on if I can get the slide going. I'm going to talk a little bit more about subjects and what life is like in sixth form. Not only what you'll be studying, because that's what you're going to hear about from all the different subjects tonight, but what a timetable might look like and how it all fits together. I just want to re-emphasise what Dr Smallwood said, which is it's really important to come and visit if you can. We have a big open evening on the 2nd of November and details are on the website, and you'll see a chat box, question and answer box. There is a link there as well to more details about our big open evening. So these are the subjects we offer. They are a range of A-level subjects. They are facilitating subjects. We don't offer some of the more vocational subjects at A-level that you might find at college. We specialise in subjects that open doors at universities, and you can see them there. So if we can get a timetable up here, this is taken from one of our year 12's timetables, and this is what it might look like if you are studying 3 A-levels and a 4th option. I say a 4th option because we don't usually recommend 4 A-levels. Some of our students do and do it very successfully, but there are loads of opportunities for students to do a wide range of other extracurricular and co-curricular activities that means that by taking on a 4th A-level they might miss out on. So what we have here is 3 A-levels, maths, geography and French. There are 4 hours of timetabled lessons for each subject, and then 1 hour of supervised study per subject, and that's study in a specialised study room, supervised by a member of staff and conducted in silence, so we help students learn independent study skills and manage their workload. There is also EPQ. This is the 4th option for this student. The 4th options are EPQ, core maths, and AS music, or a 4th A-level, normally further maths, but you can, if you get a 7.5 grade average, actually do the 4th A-level. Here, EPQ and core maths only take up 2 hours per week, so you can see how a 4th A-level of 4 hours would obviously eat into that time. APQ is an extended project qualification. It was talked about on Tuesday. The webinar, the recording of that webinar is available on our website if you do wish to go and find out more about that option, or about the core maths option, which was also featured on Tuesday's webinar. You can see there is a game slot on Wednesday afternoon where students participate in team sports or other physical activities of their choice, or voluntary work, or those sort of activities. There is an enrichment slot on a Thursday afternoon, which gives a range of other beyond the curriculum experiences and learning. So for example, you might do self-defense or car maintenance or cookery or that sort of thing. And you can also see, every student's favourite, periods that are blank. We call these free studies because we encourage students to study within them, but they can choose where they go. So on a Monday morning, for this student, you can see that periods 1 and 2 are free, so they could come in late. So their supervised study will start at 10:45 on period 3, and the student can have some study time at home, or a little bit of a lie-in, or how they choose to use their time is up to them. And we allow students off-site in this time. It's privileged that our students enjoy, and as they move from year 12 to year 13, they get more of that privilege because they are able to manage their time better and learn to prepare for university, where obviously time management and motivation and discipline, self-discipline are key. So these are all things we're trying to teach our students as we go through. And obviously the frees, lunchtime and after school allow time for attending lectures and enrichment activities and clubs and societies and debating society, for example. We have a debate every Tuesday lunchtime that students can go to. So there's plenty to do, but also time to take a breath and really enjoy sixth form and really reflect on what you're doing, what you're learning, and get new experiences. So I'm going to finish there because I'm sure you want to hear much more about the individual subjects. We have heads of department lined up ready to talk to you. So I'm going to hand over to Sally Armstrong, who is our careers lead, and who is also going to talk us through this evening and guide you.
Thank you very much, Ms Lambard. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the webinar this evening, which is concentrating on the subjects of arts and humanities. The exception to that is languages. On Tuesday, Mr Green talked all about the language provision at Bishop's, which is Spanish, German and French at A-level, and the reason for that was he was just about to depart on a school trip to Andalusia with some students in the Spanish class. So if you want to watch that, it's available again as part of the recording of the webinar on Tuesday. So our first subject for this evening is art. So if Mrs Lawrence is there, are you there?
Yeah.
Good evening. Okay, over to you.
Okay, so if we go to the next slide, please. So obviously art is a creative subject, and it's going to be a subject that you kind of can come into and you can get to sort of choose where you want it to go, really. So I'll talk a bit more about that later. In terms of actually our department, we've got 3 members of staff now. We've got a new teacher that's just started this year, Miss Smith-Edmonds, and we've got Mrs Redmill, and we're all kind of skilled in different areas. So Mrs Redmill is more of the kind of fine artist, I'm sort of more on the graphic design side, and then Miss Smith-Edmonds is kind of a little bit in the middle, to be honest, at the moment. In terms of trips and things, so we're just hopefully about to go on another trip to London with the sixth form. We've just been to London at the end of last term, and we're looking at trying to, now we're sort of growing more, maybe kind of trying to go abroad again, but it's something that we're trying to look to organise maybe for next year. Facilities wise in the department, there's tons of stuff. There's stuff for everyone, really. So if you're into kind of graphic design, we've got the full creative suite for all of the new Adobe software. We've got plotter printer. We've got sort of more traditional things like screen printing. We've got a photographic studio that we've just set up, which is fantastic. And obviously, you know, anything an art department should have all the kind of traditional things. So all the stuff that you'll want for art is right there, just all in one place. Can we go to the next slide, please, Mrs. Lambard? Thank you. So to get into art, you need a grade 6, an art-based subject, really. So it doesn't necessarily have to be fine art. It could be something art-based like textiles or DT, or graphic design if you've done it at another school as well, or photography. Or we can take people on a kind of site portfolio. So if you're interested in doing art and you haven't done art before and you have got the entry grades to get into Bishops, we can look at kind of portfolios and base on that as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what does the course involve? So this is kind of where when you come in to do art at Bishops, you don't necessarily have to decide what you want to do straight away. So you could come in and you could think that you might want to do fine art, and then the first project that everyone does is under one theme, which is called structures, but you get to explore loads of different kind of parts of art and design. So within that project, you'll learn how to use Photoshop and Illustrator if you haven't done that before. You'll do kind of traditional printmaking. You'll do some more sort of fine art kind of drawing, painting. You could do some ceramics if you want to. You could do some textiles if you want to. So you explore kind of everything in that first sort of term right up until Christmas. And then after that, you can decide which area you want to specialise in, because we actually offer 3 different A levels. We offer art, craft and design, photography, or graphic design. So some students might come in straight away and already know, you know, especially the ones that have come from Bishops. I know a lot of them might come in already knowing they want to do graphic design, which is fine. Your first project can be more kind of that way if you want to, but some people might come into Bishops not knowing what they want to do, just thinking they kind of want to do kind of some sort of art. And that's why I think our course and our school is really unique, because we offer all 3 and the chance to explore them all before you have to make a decision. So can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So yeah, the course is made up of, like I said, it's mainly coursework. So component 1, which is your portfolio, which is 60% of your grade, is what we refer to as the personal investigation, and that's a project that you will write the brief to yourself. So once you finish the first project, which is the structures project, where you're doing all the different things, you write your own brief for your personal investigation. So that will be a photography brief, a graphics brief, or an art and design brief. That project will take up most of your time here at Bishops, so you'll start that in year 12 kind of after Christmas, and that will run right through to the January of year 13. So that's the 60% portfolio. Component 2, which is the exam component, we refer to it as an exam, but it's kind of just essentially another piece of coursework that runs over 10 weeks. So everyone in the country will get the same starting points on an exam paper on the 1st of February. So whether that be the photography paper, the graphics paper, or the art paper, and you will spend the rest of your 10 weeks in year 13 working on that project, which is referred to as the exam. So essentially it's kind of 2 pieces of coursework, but one of them is just in a timed sort of allocation. So results wise, our results are fantastic in sixth form. Most of our students come away with really high grades. Last year, I think nearly everyone got an A or an A star, and that's been the same for the past 3-4 years since I've been here as head of department. The results have been amazing in art and design. I think, yeah, the results have been great. I can't say anything other than that about this slide. So if we go to the next slide, I'm not sure how many slides I've got left. Yeah, so really high rate of A star to B. I think art is really good because I was talking to students about kind of why they do art, and you know, even if you're not going to definitely do art for a degree course afterwards, I think that art is one of those subjects that just fits really well with other subjects because it's kind of quietly ticking along all the time. There's not going to be any sort of shocks or bumps in the road because it's all coursework based. When you've kind of got those pressure points from your other subjects, art can be something that I'm not saying it's easy, it's a lot of work, but it's a continual lot of work. So if you suddenly had kind of a big assignment coming up for something like history, you could kind of relax a little bit on art. I wouldn't say this all the time, don't relax all the time, but I think also it's a break from kind of the academic subjects as well. So it's a nice one, and it sort of goes alongside with lots of other subjects. If you want to check out more art, you can see my last slide. We have an Instagram account called BWS Art 1, and we try and regularly kind of put all of the art on there. We're better on there than on the website, so that's the place to check out if you want regular looking at the art. But obviously all the information is also on the website as well. But that's kind of, I think, all of my slides done. So if you've got any questions you want to ask me.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mrs. Lawrence.
Okay.
Somebody wrote in and asked about fine art. So if you wanted to pursue that as your A-level, you would do art, craft and design, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so art, craft and design and fine art are essentially kind of the same thing. Art, craft and design just allows you to explore all the areas of art, really. So if you want to specialise in fine art, it's essentially the same as art, craft and design, but because we have so many facilities, fine art is kind of slightly more limited. So art, craft and design would allow somebody that wants to do kind of more fine art to paint, and then they could take that painting and then they could develop it a bit in Photoshop, or they could basically do anything else to go alongside it. So it's the same thing, really. It's just you can do a little bit more with art, craft and design.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the software that's available for students to use in the department?
So we have all of the Adobe software. We actually are just upgraded to the 2025, which is insane because we're not even in 2024. Creative Suite. So Mr. White's I think just about to do that. So we've got Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, like the full Creative Suite. So all of the software that you will need. Okay,
and do students need much training on that, or is it sort of embedded in the work that they do on an ongoing basis?
Well, if you are somebody that's come from Bishops, you will already know how to use all of that, because that's something that we do, obviously. But we've got people this year who have come from different schools who have never used any of the creative software before. So whatever level you come in at, we'll teach you how to use it. And we are flexible with the classes as well. So obviously the students that know how to use it, we have different ways of teaching them to the people that have never used it before. So yeah, you don't need to know how to use any of it. That's absolutely fine.
Brilliant, thank you. We've just had a question come in. How many students take art each year?
Well, so year 13, there's 20 of them, and this year there's actually less. There's only 7 people this year, but I do think that's a lot to do with my year 11 class that year were a lot smaller due to COVID. So for example, we have 79 year 11s this year. I only had 19 the year before, and then I have another 72 in year 10. So I'm thinking it's gonna get bigger again because of the GCSE.
Absolutely, fantastic. What are you looking for in a student who's applying for art?
I think don't be sort of surprised by the amount. Like, I'm not going to say, I think the thing that kind of puts people off is they think art's a lot of work, and it is. So you have to be somebody that's going to be consistently working. I think that's our main thing that we're looking for. Obviously enthusiastic, interested in the subject, inquisitive kind of, and have kind of a good independent kind of work ethic, because I think a lot of art is although we're there to help you, it's a lot of it's kind of self-driven, but I think that's our sixth form, like all over. I think that's kind of the people that we're looking for, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, thank you very much, that was great.
No worries, thank you.
So we're now going to move across to another very creative subject, which is music. Mr. Edney, are you available, please?
I am, yes.
Good evening, over to you, please.
Good evening, everybody. Here we go. So if you could go straight to the next slide. I want to start talking just about the A-level and the AS that we offer at Bishops and basically how that's broken down. So if we could have the next slide, please. So while we're waiting for that, we do Educast A-level at Bishops, and as I've just mentioned, and also Mrs. Lambard mentioned, we offer the AS and the A-level, and the AS can be chosen as a fourth subject for lower sixth. We have all of the year 12 are together, so regardless of whether you were to choose A-level or A-level, you would be in the same class for year 12, because of the way that the exam is structured for the two. We teach the same unit of work in year 12, and then in year 13 you would have to then learn another unit of work. What for A-level in music, you can prioritize your coursework. So if you're currently doing GCSE music at the moment, you're having to do 2 performances and 2 compositions, and then you sit your exam. For the A-level, you're allowed to say that I'm better at performing or I'm better at composing. This is just for the A-level, not for the AS. And as you can see, you can weight it so that the one that you are more proficient with, the one that you're happier doing, counts as 35% towards your A-level rather than 25%. I'm not going to go through all the minutes of what you need to do. It's all on the slide there. And if this is something you're considering, I would suggest that you have a look at the Educast website, because it's all very clear on there. For the AS, there is a 90-minute paper, not dissimilar to the GCSE. And for A-level, there's a 2 hours and 15-minute paper. Oh, yes, please, Mrs. Lambard. The next slide. So this talks a bit about what is in the exam. So depending on what board you're currently doing from GCSE, you will have to have done a set work. If you're on EdXL, you might have 17 set works. But for Educast, there's just there's 2 set works for A-level and 1 set work for AS. The last 2 years we've sided with the Mendelssohn Symphony, but this is decided at the beginning of the year with the group, actually. So we analyse both and we listen to both a lot, and then we choose. So you can choose between the Haydn and the Mendelssohn. Then there's a second area of study again which we choose. The current year 13s were really keen to do independent learning, so we've facilitated them choosing their own area of study. We've got some that are doing rock and pop, others musical theatre, and then one that's doing jazz. And then the current year 12s, we haven't fully decided yet, but we think they're all going to choose jazz. So there's lots of different routes for learning, and hopefully it should keep you interested, because you should have a vested interest in the area of study that you choose. For those then going on to do A-level, we choose the into the 20th century. We look at Poulenc and Debussy. We don't do the into the 21st. So you have to choose. So that's the A-level. And so if we can move on, I've just got a little slide here because I always find this quite interesting. So an ex-headmaster of Eton, who now is in educational management and works with the top 5% of grossing companies in the world, to find out what student or what person they want coming through university and higher education. And this was actually a slide that they did from a mind map from the qualities that they wanted from people going into their businesses and their companies. And the headmaster, Tony Small, his name was, actually walked away from that meeting thinking, well, of all the people that I know that have left my college and gone into higher education, it's the musicians that have these qualities. So I just wanted to drop this in there, that whilst I would imagine lots of you are thinking that music won't be the thing that you continue when you go to university or into higher education, that actually the qualities that you can learn as a musician do stand you in very good stead. And a question that I get asked a lot, and I probably or might even be asked this evening, is about how universities look at A-level music and how they value it. And I can honestly say that they look at it very kindly and they value it very highly. There was a period of time when there was the phrase of soft subject A-level music is not that. It is not easy, and it is valued by universities. So next subject, please. Next slide, please. I want to talk about the other side of music now, and what we offer in terms of extracurricular, because this is a huge part of what we do at Bishops, and something that we're incredibly proud of. We have 2 choirs at Bishops. We have the main choir, which is unauditioned. We just ask that you can hold a tune. There's currently 67 pupils in the choir. We went on tour to Prague last year, and this year we are planning concerts in Salisbury at the cathedral, at a big church in Wilton, where we'll be performing Mozart C minor Mass with 3 other schools and an orchestra, and then we do several other concerts during the year as well. So that's our choir. And then moving on, please. Oh, sorry, but actually I will. Sorry, the Bishop Singers is our chamber choir. Now that's our audition choir for more advanced singers. We have already given Evensong at St Peter's College in Oxford, and we will be doing Salisbury again later in the year, and then we're going on tour to Cornwall, where we're doing Evensong at Exeter Cathedral on the way down, and then we're going to be doing a concert at St Michael's Mount on one of the days that we're down there as well. Mrs Armstrong's smiling because that's me telling her that that's confirmed. That was only confirmed yesterday, so that's good news. The other ensembles that we have at school, we have a school big band and a school orchestra as well, which are both very busy during the year. The big band have already performed at the Salisbury Arts Centre in September, and then both ensembles are going to be featured in the concert at St Thomas's Church in November, and then various other performance opportunities during the school year as well. So moving on to performance opportunities, that was a great segue, that, Mrs Lambard, thank you. That's one of our main mantras in the music department, is that we like to be able to offer opportunities to everybody that is a musician, whether you're doing A-level music or not. If you're an instrumentalist and you're having lessons, or even not having lessons, but you have something coming up that you'd like to practice your piece for, or you have a whole recital that you want to air before you go off to your exam, then that's something that we try very hard to make sure that the opportunities are always there. There's now a musician that plays for school assemblies as everybody comes in. We have soloists in the cathedral services, prize giving. There are lunchtime concerts in schools. We have several concerts throughout the year, as I've already said, at St Martin's and St Thomas's and Wilton churches. So it's just about a plethora of opportunities for pupils to perform. So if you are a musician, even if you decide not to do the A-level with me, I would still love to meet you in September, because I will find an opportunity for you to perform. Trips and event, I've sort of already touched on him. This is my 4th year now at Bishops. We've been to Cornwall once already. We've been to Oxford several times. The choir went to Prague last year. We do several concerts every year, and Cornwall is planned, as I said, again for this year, and then there will be a big tour for the choir and instrumentalists February 25, the venue still to be decided. So that's me and our music department. The Twitter and the Instagram handle was on pretty much every slide. I'm fairly robust at making sure people know what that is, and that's my email address there as well. So if you have any questions, please do get in touch, and I'm sure that Mrs Armstrong might probably ask me some questions now as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really nice to see these pictures, which I was at quite a lot of them, which was really exciting. Going back to the A-level,
yes.
What other subjects does music complement, do you think?
Well, I think ultimately, whatever your choice of A-levels are, there is a complementary aspect in there. The maths is always one that favours very well people that are that way minded, that way of the brain, the way it works. They often go hand in hand. Languages, we have a lot of students that do an English or an MFL. And obviously the nature of music and its theoretical analysis, that having bilingual linguistic skills is very handy as well. and then art and PE quite often pupils do very well with that combination. So the short answer is all of them, but I think those are probably the ones that feature more often than others.
Okay, and what does a typical lesson look like? How many do you have studying music, for example? So
it fluctuates from year to year, but we're fortunate in that we have fairly small classes. So in year 13 is 7 at the moment, and year 12 is 6. We've had less than that, and we've had more than that in my time at Bishop's, but it's usually fairly personal, small numbers. So the lessons have a very sort of friendly and workable environment, and personal as well. We get to know the pupils very well.
Okay, so does a lesson, for example, have a practical aspect in every one, or are they split sort of practical and theory, or how does that work?
No, we expect the pupils to look after the practical side of it outside of our teaching. So the timetabled academic music lessons will be focusing on theory and historical analysis and then composition. But we run performance classes. So the year 12s have 2 days ago have just given their first performance class. And we try and do one of those at least every half term. So we allow time within the curriculum to check the performance and feedback and suggest how they can improve, leading towards their recital that they have to do for EDUCAS. But we don't teach performance in that sense. That is expected. If you're doing A-level music, you should be having one-to-one instrumental lessons.
Okay, and could you talk a little bit about what you're expecting from a student who applies? What are the formal entry requirements and anything else that you'd advise an applicant to look at?
Because of the theoretical difficulty and the analysis that is required for A-level, we do ask for a 7 at GCSE. I'm prepared to have a conversation if things don't go quite the way you thought it would do in the summer, and you have a 6, particularly a high 6, but really it should be a 7 or above at GCSE, because the theoretical elements of the GCSE paper is not very difficult, whereas there is a huge jump to A-level. So whilst we do cover that at the beginning of year 12, I think that if that is something that you struggled with in year 11, then probably you're going to find the A-level very difficult.
Okay, thank you. There's a question that's actually just come in. Are the A-level and the AS level taught together?
Yes, I think I did say that. So the whole of year 12 AS and A-level are taught. Well, I say the whole of year 12 until May. They're taught together because the 2 units of work for AS and A-level, A and B, are exactly the same. There are 2 extra questions on the A-level question on those units, but we teach the 2 together. And then in year 13, you then go on to the area. Well, we do area study into the 21st century, but the AS doesn't cover that. So they are taught together, and then in year 13, the AS pupils do not come back.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Edney. That was brilliant, and I'm sure there'll be lots of interest in any of the opportunities that you've spoken about this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we're going to go across to English to Mr. NU.
Good evening.
Hello, Mr.
I'm
NU.
on camera. I'm on
No.
camera, I'm afraid, so I got absolutely drenched walking home. So I'm in my, as the Americans say, leisure wear.
I like your style.
Thank you.
Please continue with your presentation.
Okay, well, obviously I'm here to talk about A-level English literature. We do just the English literature A-level here, and we find it's a popular subject, subject that goes down really well. And just to start off with, if you have a look at the pictures there, these are some people that used to be famous. It shows you really just what a broad selection of people have studied English literature at university. You know, from journalists through to musicians, through to comedians. It's a really wide-ranging subject, and there's a reason for that. It's because the subject itself is very all-encompassing and wide-ranging. So can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so there are plenty of misconceptions about studying English literature. First of all, I think people feel that they have to be really well read and that English has to be their best subject. And we've frequently found out that that isn't the case. So, for example, we've had students that have picked English literature as a third or fourth subject, you know, thinking that it'll make a difference from maybe studying STEM subjects, sciences and maths, and it will make a bit of a change. And quite often those are students that it's turned out that English literature has been their favourite subject. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you don't feel it's your best subject. Oh, hang on, the slides are popping ahead here with me. So yeah, this basically addresses some of the misconceptions. People worry about English literature being about reading all the time, doing a lot of reading. That's not really the case. Obviously, we like it if you're widely read and you enjoy reading. And thinking of the current Year 12 group I'm teaching, they are really well read and they do really enjoy reading. But there are some students that have got a lot on. They don't have the time to read as much as they'd like to. So you don't have to be hugely widely read. And we will introduce you through extracts through a range of literature, you know, from early modern really up to the current stuff. So you will have a lot of experience of literature on the course. So don't worry about feeling you need to read a lot of stuff. We like it if you read around the subject and you read around the authors we're studying, but it's not totally necessary. And we don't actually read in lessons either. So we don't just spend lessons sitting there reading through text. We hope that that's something that you do in your own time. We get you to pre-prepare and read ahead of the lessons if possible. It's awkward teaching it if you haven't read it, obviously. But yeah, the lessons are really for discussion, for talking, exploring ideas, researching, that kind of stuff. In terms of the range of the literature we cover, we do cover a huge range actually. Probably the earliest text we study is Shakespeare, and we study text right the way through to 21st century texts. So it's a whole range. There are basically two halves of the course, which you'll see in a moment. One half of the course tends to cover the more classic side, and the other half tends to cover more modern text, and also we specialise in Gothic literature as well, which students often find really interesting, one of the most interesting parts of the course. But as it says on the slide there, one thing I find interesting is a teacher is just how many of the students do get to love the classic texts, the older texts as well, and become fascinated by them. So I think it's something that some people may have preconceived ideas about as they join the course, but by the time students get to year 13, they really love writers such as John Webster, Christina Rossetti, Shakespeare. They really get into it. English literature has a reputation as a difficult subject, and I think it is in some ways, but that's not a bad thing. It's a subject which is popular with us with universities. It's what used to be called a hard subject, which means that it covers a whole range of skills, from communicating in terms of presentation, in terms of writing, through to debating, through to philosophy related research skills as well. So, you know, it does cover a massive range of areas and skills, which is one of the things that makes it a really popular subject in terms of university entrance, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, this is what the next slide is going to be about. The idea is it's transferable skills. So English is a subject that that matches really well with a host of other subjects in terms of all the things you can see there. And we teach you a lot of these things. So things like essay writing, we approach in a really structured way. So each of the essays you write in your exams, we'll give you a toolkit to approach that. We'll give you the vocabulary you need. And one of the things we love seeing is our students getting better and better and better at essay writing and written communication. It improves really, really quickly through year 12 and into year 13. And we also talk about, we also teach study skills as well, as you can see there, how to research, note-taking, time management. We've got a subscription to a really good site called Massalit, which has got thousands of mini lectures on all of the texts we're studying. And they're in series. They're really good for independent research and for getting notes down and for improving essays and that kind of thing. Yeah, and I've already talked about Russell Group and how they hold the subject in high esteem and how it's seen as a facilitating subject, a subject that can really branch out into a lot of different careers and a lot of different degree subjects as well, for that matter. A lot of our students go on to look at things like journalism and law, and I think there's another slide coming up about that as well. So this is a quick overview of the course. I won't bore you by going through it bit by bit, but it's basically divided between the classical texts in component 1. Component 2 focuses in on the Gothic, so we're looking at a wide range of Gothic texts, not just the older stuff like Dracula, but newer Gothic texts like Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, series of short stories. And there's also an NEA element where you write about modern poetry, where you've got an opportunity to write poetry yourself based on the style of another poet, and also a comparison between 2 modern texts too. So the coursework component is about 20%. Next slide, please. So this is a range of the texts that we're studying at the moment. And as you can see, right the way from early modern texts such as the Duchess of Malfi and the Tempest, through to modern texts such as Ian McEwan's Atonement, which is one of our coursework texts. And you can see the Gothic element coming in there with Dracula and the Bloody Chamber. So I've talked a little bit about relevant career areas, and we do keep in touch with our students. We develop a really good relationship with them. The whole nature of literature is that you talk about all sorts of stuff, and there's all sorts of digressions in lessons. Obviously, we cover what we need to, but it is great in terms of just being able to chat. And talk about the real world as well, which literature always holds a mirror up to. So you can see some of the different careers that people have gone into, having studied literature at A level and studied it at degree level. All sorts of things. You know, some of those are quite glamorous, including teaching, and some of them less so. But yeah, you know, they're interesting careers, and we really feel passionately about the arts and how important the arts are. So I won't read through that next slide for you, but it does give you an idea of why English literature is an important subject. I feel really passionate about it, and I know the rest of my department do, and I know our students do as well. It's a hugely important subject. The arts are absolutely crucial. Without that, there is no soul. And I think this is what this slide encapsulates. So we would love to see as many people go for English literature as possible. If you've got any questions about it, please do get in touch. My email address, I'm not as efficient as Mr. Edney was in the last presentation, but my email address is available on the school website. So please do get in touch with any questions you've got, and we would love to see you as well on the evening in November.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Enyu. That was great. Could you just talk a little bit about what other subjects some of your students combine English literature with?
Well, they combine English literature with all sorts of subjects, because I think, for example, we get some students who are very much going down, you know, science, computer science, engineering, that sort of route, and they've enjoyed elements of English, and they want to keep a connection with it a little bit. And some of the students who study 4 A levels will do that, will maybe pick English literature as the 4th. But also in terms of it as an A-level, if you're studying 3 A-levels, it connects really well with subjects such as history, philosophy and ethics, class civ, for obvious reasons, you know, through the literary links with those subjects, and also because we approach literature from a postmodern point of view. So context is everything. Context is really important in terms of the writers we're studying. So to get a historical background to the writers and see how the writers reflect the periods they're writing in and how they reflect the attitudes of those periods is really important. So that's where history comes in. We look at literature from a Freudian and psychoanalytical perspective. So we very much look at different attitudes to literature, whether that's feminist, Marxist, psychoanalytical. So with the psychoanalytical side of things, you're looking very much at links with psychology. So there's really not a subject it doesn't match with, to be honest. It's really, really flexible.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed for that. Our next subject also touches on literature, even older literature. Mr. Owen, good evening. Or hello, Mr. Owen, are you with us? No. Okay, well, let's swap around a little bit. Mr. Joyce, are you available to step in, please? Oh, hang on a minute. I'm afraid we've got a little bit of a technical.
Yes, I am.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce.
Sorry,
I know I'm asking you, so
through.
we've just got to go a little bit forward through the class civ slides to the history ones, if you'll bear with us for a second. Good evening to you. You're going to talk to us about A-level history this evening.
Yes.
We've got quite a few slides to fast forward through to, which Miss Lambard, our new technical apprentice this evening, is actually doing a great job. As you can see, we were going to have a great tour through the classical world. So over to you now, Mr. Joyce. Thank you very much.
I wish I'd like to have seen that. Right, so hello. So yes, I'm Mr. Joyce. I am the second department for history and one of the A-level specialist teachers who teaches the Russia side of the course specifically at the moment, but I've taught both sides. So on the single slide that I have, which looks very unimpressive in comparison to classical civilization, as Mr. Owen will show you later, I have the breakdown of what we do. So as I say, I'm the Tsarist Russia side teacher, and you can see there that's the title of our course, but that doesn't really give it much credit. So both of these courses have been chosen really because A, they have a huge breadth of interesting content over large periods of time, or they look into depth, hence paper 2, the depth study, into depth into very seminal moments in British history. So Russia, why should you study Russia? If you want to know about lots of huge colourful characters, in some cases literary, for example, Alexander III, 6'4", 18 stone, could bend a fireplace poker with his bare hands, could crush a silver ruble in one of his hands, could rip a pack of cards in half, the embodiment of the Russian bear. If you want to learn about the kind of things they got up to, people like Rasputin, people like Stalin, who I'm sure you know a lot about already. You may not know, for example, that Stalin had a very fine tenor voice and could speak 4 different languages. You probably know him as a mass murderer, and he certainly was that, but there are other sides to Stalin as well. So that's an interesting fact. So with our BREP study, as well as with our BREP study, we also we look at a large swathe of Russian history, as you can see the date range there, from the Tsar reformer Alexander II, the great reformer, to the last Tsar, Nicholas II, who is, as some people may or may not know, assassinated by the Bolsheviks. And we go right up into the later communist period with Nikita Khrushchev. That looks at historians' extracts. So it works really well with English in terms of analytical use of a text, in terms of essay writing. And he was talking about earlier about what subjects match well. As he said, history and English literature match very well, and obviously extended essay writing. Paper 2, British Depth Study, is slightly different. That looks at sources, so sources from the time period, and bearing in mind the time period goes up from 1954 all the way up to 2007, which for some of us sitting here seems very recent, I'm sure, even myself. And that looks into some very deep detail into British political history, and in terms of subject it matches very well to A-level politics, and some of the course content does overlap there as well. So the way it's assessed, as I say, is through historian's extracts in paper 1, in the brochure paper and essay work, and in the depth study in source evaluation, source use and essay work in paper 2. And then we have a piece of coursework, which, as you can see there, is broken down into its component parts. What we do is we give pupils 4 choices of questions on a range of topics. So if they felt that, for example, that the Russia course or the Britain course has been limiting, which I certainly hope they haven't, our NEA topics seek to kind of fill those areas. So, for example, we have a question on the fall of the Roman Empire, on Tudor rebellion, on the causes and the impacts of the Black Death, for example. So we try and bridge the gap in terms of broad chronology in our NEA, in our coursework choices. So you should study A-level history if you like reading about history, if you like learning about history, if you like reading in general. There is a fair amount of reading to do. There's a summer pack which will provide you with some advice for this, and I've always got lots of advice of things you should read, because even with our limited leisure time that we have in any teaching department, we do also read quite a lot. So if you're thinking about is it for you, do you like history? Do you like this idea of these colourful characters and this interesting kind of scope of period? And do you also like reading about it and looking into depth? Because that's what A-level history is. It's a step up from GCSE into a more in-depth engagement with the subject. So hopefully that's given you a fairly quick whistle-stop tour in one very unimpressive slide into A-level history and why you should choose it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Do you think that there's a particular combination that students go with? You mentioned English literature, Mr. N, you mentioned English literature. Do you think that most of your students, say, tend to do history and politics, or is it a complete across the board sort of variance as to what they choose to do as their other A-levels?
Good question. So classically, people tend to, we have a large amount of people that pick history and politics because they go well together, and particularly, as I say, in terms of the paper 2 Britain course, there is some direct content overlap. So, for example, we learn about the failure of the consensus politics in the 1950s in the history course, and that's also part of the politics course. People tend to match politics or English literature because they're essay subjects and they're similar skill sets. However, really, broadly speaking, there's no one combination that you have to do. Lots of people also choose that perhaps they want to do something that's less essay heavy and less reliant on similar skills. So people do science, people do further maths. I wouldn't say there's any combination that you'd be particularly advantaged by doing. It depends how much tolerance you've got to essay writing, I suppose, and to be quite honest, whether you want to be doing a lot of those essay-based subjects. I myself did English literature, for example, but I also did theatre studies because I wanted something that was slightly different. So it takes all sorts.
Indeed it does. Could you talk a little bit about the co-curricular activities that the history department offer, please? Great.
So we're very lucky to have some very engaged Year 12s and Year 13s who help us run our History Society. We have recently we've been doing very well. We've had weekly guest lecturers. Most of them have been like this, have been sort of Zoom based or online based. We also have a budgeting history club, which is very popular with Year 7 up to Year 13, which is a really great way of different areas of the school making contact with each other. Basically, that's a weekly thing as well. And we also have a couple of trips. Our big trip is a Year 11 and Year 10 trip, but we're also trying to get some other sixth form trips off the ground as well. Unfortunately, probably not to Russia, however many times people ask about whether we do
Maybe
Russia.
Not. So the History Society, could you give us some examples of speakers that you've had in there?
So last week we had causes of the Black Death and impacts of the Black Death, and this week we've had Tudor Rebellion. So they've happened to, not necessarily deliberately, but happened to overlap with our NEA topic areas as well in that particular case. That's partly because the sixth formers who are the main driving force to organising it, that's an area of interest because the particular sixth formers have written their coursework on those areas, so that they've looked into that in more detail. But we've had some other kind of broader ranging economic history, some more political kind of focus history. It just depends who people can get in contact with and what their interest is. So that's a really interesting bit of diversity there.
Yeah, so actually really broad.
Yes.
So, well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Joyce. I think that was your first webinar for History A-Level. So congratulations. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We're going to go back now. Please bear with us because we're going to reverse through the slides and see if we can actually make contact with Mr. Owen.
I can see him, so I think that looks promising. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are you able to unmute your microphone, Mr. Owen? Fantastic. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hooray!
I'm getting a lag. I'm hearing two voices.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
Sorry, I must have two windows open. How
Okay.
to close it down?
Are you okay to go then?
Have I not? I thought I had.
We can only hear one, so that's absolutely fine.
Okay, I can, yes.
Great, thank you.
Oh. Okay, sorry. Let me. Hello?
Hi.
Still there?
Yes, still here.
Okay, so I'm really sorry. I don't know what's happening at my end. Okay, I think I'm good to go.
Good.
Right, shall I? Sorry, evening everyone. Sorry about this. Yes, so with the classical civilization, as you can see on, I've been trying to show there, it's about the Greeks and the Romans, and about the cultures that when they flourished 2,000 and 2,500 years ago. So you can tell from that straight away that it is like history in so much as we look back. As we look back through both their literature, so they're the ties with English, and we also look at their built environment as well. So you would see on the slide some of the places that we have visited, and so we look at the cultural side of it as well. So and it's vast. It's a really huge subject, and unfortunately we have to narrow it down a little bit. We have to narrow it down into some of their national stories, the Odyssey and the Aeneid, the Greeks and the Romans, and then we have to narrow down again and we look at Roman government, but we also look at Greek art. And so some of these images that you'll see coming through are associated with Greek art as well, you know, and some of the famous buildings and places. I do sometimes feel like I'm repeating everything that you hear from English and history, and in so much as we are a humanity as well, we do look at very similar outcomes. We use source work. Our ancient things are our sources. What we want from you in terms of writing essays is very similar. So I always say, and one of the things I sort of feel is very important, that consider the skills that you'll get from the humanities subjects, and then look across the board and think, well, how would I like to gain those skills? Do I want to gain those skills looking at modern literature? Do I want to gain those skills looking at ancient literature and ancient history? And so modern history also. So I would just say, please take your time as you're thinking about it. Come and visit us on the 2nd of November and see what it is that we have, and maybe do a little bit differently. Please come and look, speak to the students. And they can tell you, you know, what the workload is like, what the work that we set, how much work we set. So, you know, I think you'd find it fascinating. I think it's a very wide-ranging and still an important subject. And I say one of the things that I feel we have in common with the others is that we do talk a lot. There's a lot of discussion there. It's one of the best things about the job is actually to open young people's eyes to the things that we've found fascinating for so many years. And so, yeah, please do consider Class Civ as, you know, as an option, and come and see us. We've what's been nice this last year is that we've grown in size a little bit. From our upper six, we had a really small group of, but it's 50% boys and girls. There's only sort of 6 students with us there. But this year in the lower 6, we've blossomed to 15, and our ratio is now it's 1 boy to every 3 girls. So it's quite normal for the humanities in that sort of sense. But we do see, you know, a sort of growth there again. And if we can maintain good numbers, then these places that you see, these exotic places that you see on the slides with Italy and Greece, become much more viable the more students we have to take them out there. Last couple of years we've gone to, sorry, it was 2020, I say last couple of years, we haven't done it for COVID. We've got a trip, a letter has gone out to go to Italy for this one, but we are doing that joint with our GCSE Latin students. So trips are there as well. So I've covered a real broad brush there. I didn't want to go into too fine a detail because obviously you can look at things on the brochure and on our website. And as I said, do please come and talk to us on the 2nd of November.
Thank you very much indeed. Could you reassure students that they don't, or what level of Latin or Greek they need to have achieved by the time they do Class Civ, please?
Yeah, absolutely none. There's no expectation at all that they've done anything in the ancient languages at all. If they were to go, well, during A-level, we do teach them odd terms, Latin terms, some Greek terms, so that they can use those in their essays. So that gives them a confidence of of what they're talking about. But those words tend to be in isolation, or they're just technical words for the subject that we're covering. So no, none at all. But if students were thinking of going on to do classical civilization beyond A-level, when they got to university, they would be offered the opportunity to study Latin or Greek in their first year, and that's something that's quite common on university courses, but not required for us.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Owen. The slides were amazing to have a visual feast on Italy and Greece, so thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, we had some technical troubles there.
No, so, my fault.
Mr. Stamp, are you there to talk about politics, please? Okay, we're obviously having some significant difficulties this evening. Let's try geography. Right. Give me a moment, please. Oh. Mr. Stamp, thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi there. Fantastic, thank you. Miss Lambard, could you forward to the slide, please? Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Stamp. Thank you very much.
Hello. Well, it seems like not long ago in some ways that I was speaking to you last year, but so much has happened since then. I started teaching politics in 2019, and at this time then was just up to the proroguing of Parliament. Johnson had just got rid of 21 of his own MPs, and then we had the 2019 election. COVID came along. On the other side of the Atlantic, there was 2 impeachment procedures against Trump, and then in the last year had 3 prime ministers, 6 education secretaries. It just keeps going and going and going. So there's not really been a better time. If you're not interested now, there's not much else that will interest you. And I think for those the cohort that we've got currently, and anyone who's thinking of doing politics, next year you're going to have a presidential election in November across the pond, and likely that there'll be an October election or November election here as for a general election as well. So there's lots and lots to get involved in, and if you're following the news now, if you're interested in things that are going on in the past few years, in understanding all of those things behind it, it's really exciting time to be studying politics.
Fantastic, thank you. Could you talk a bit about the A-level subject as a specific learning?
Yeah, so the course is the EdXL A-level course, and it covers 3 units. This is also how it's examined as well. So there are 3 papers that cover these 3 units, and paper 1, which we started our year 12s off at the moment, is all about UK politics. So it covers democracy and participation, direct democracy, referenda, covers political parties in the UK, the different electoral systems. So we've been looking at the electoral systems used across the UK, both in devolved regions and for the UK general election. The next we'll be moving on to voter behaviour in the media, looking at past general elections and how people are swayed or not swayed by different media. The second component covers the structural parts of UK government, so the constitution, how parliament works, and the prime minister and the executive, and then relationship between the branches, Supreme Court. And both of these papers are examined in the exact same way. So you've got a set of big 30-mark essays, and then there's another component, which is the ideologies component. So for paper 1, we cover conservatism, liberalism and socialism as political ideologies. So look at the political science behind those. And then for paper 2, it's a question on feminism, which is the choice ideology that we choose. In year 13, we cover the third component, which is comparative politics. And with the year 13s currently, we're starting to look at the US. So US Constitution, Miss Anders is currently covering the presidency. We'll move on to Congress at the moment, which is stuck because there's in the midst of a government shutdown, they're desperately trying to elect a new speaker for the Congress, which is they've never ever got rid of their speaker. So the same thing is happening on the US side. It's never more exciting to watch. We also cover Supreme Court and civil rights and democracy and participation. And you might be aware that at the moment there's a primary process going on to select candidates for the 2020 presidential race. It's most likely going to be Biden versus Trump, but we're still going through this process of selecting candidates. So I think November 7th is going to be the third primary debate for Republican candidates, but Trump doesn't turn up because he is, I think, 40 to 50 points ahead, and he's likely to be the candidate, although might have some legal troubles before then. That paper also has a similar style of 30-mark essays, and there's some slightly shorter mark answers that are 12 markers, and they are comparative ones. So you might compare the Supreme Court or the President and the Prime Minister, and they're a little bit shorter, but they're all quite big essay assessments.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, an awful lot of your students actually choose to go on and study politics and international relations at university, don't they?
Yes, lots. International relations is popular. Straight politics and history has also been very popular, particularly this year. There's quite a lot of crossover between history and politics, so I've seen a lot of students who are keen to do both of those. PPE as well. So lots of students go on to study politics, and or as a component of their university degrees, and then take it on to jobs, not just in politics, but also in media, and yeah, lots of things. There's lots of things to go on to. And also, you know, we've had lots of students who will do sciences as well, but take politics at the same time. A student last year, he's gone on to do engineering at Cambridge, but he really enjoyed studying politics as well, because it gives not only a really good understanding of how things are going at the moment, how we've got to these positions, but also the style of writing that you do, and the essay forming and forming these arguments and debating. Yeah, it's really, really useful to go on to do lots and lots of things.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I'm looking at your next slide. I was listening to the news agents, who I love, earlier this evening, talking about giving Trump a £5 billion bribe not to run. So would you like to talk a bit about what you would recommend students, potential students even, to look at to expand their interest?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things about choosing this topic, I mean, it's important that we know the subjects that we study and how they're assessed, but by far the most important is keeping up to current affairs, because unlike some other topics, the things that you'll need to include in your essays and your answers are really as up-to-date examples as you can. So to do that, it's really, really important to be following the news and following current affairs, and there's lots of ways to do that. So there's plenty to read in newspapers and periodicals. Economist and other things are very good. Miss Anders is religiously watches Channel 4 News every night. I'm usually trying to wrangle some toddlers to sleep. So instead, I listen to lots and lots of podcasts about the UK and US. News agents is fab. I'm still loyal to newscasts, but really Emily Maitlis and John Sopel and Lewis Goodall, actually, they're superb. Although now they're off the BBC, you do realise how much they like to swear. So, but yeah. So I listen to lots of podcasts. It doesn't really matter as long as you're following current affairs. That's the most important thing. And if you are not currently following current affairs, try some of these things. If it grabs you, then politics is probably a really good choice for you. If it doesn't, it's probably not. Another really good one to watch at the moment would be Laura Kunsberg's recent documentary, which is called State of Chaos, which is on iPlayer at the moment, and there's 3 episodes that follows the Johnson, Truss and Sunak presidencies so far. Actually, it doesn't go on to Sunak, but it follows May, Johnson and Truss, and it's just an incredible story of the last 5-6 years. And again, if that really interests you, that's a good indication for studying politics. But keeping up to speed with these events is really, really important.
Fantastic, thank you. We've actually had a couple of questions come in, if I can pose those to you.
Sure.
The first one is about the GCSEs that are required to study politics at A level. What are your entry requirements, please?
Well, English at 6 is good. It's studying, having history as a background would be useful, but it's not essential. So the most important thing is that you understand the assessments are based on long form essay answers. So you need to be committed to be able to write those in exam conditions, and then following the news, following current affairs, with a will to use those examples to support your writing and understand some of the deeper structural elements of politics.
Yeah, so a 6 in history if taken, or if you haven't done history, you'll accept a 6 in English language.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And the other question, which is really good actually, are history and politics complementary together, or are they too similar?
I don't think they're too similar. There's quite a lot of overlap because the history department covers UK history from post-war up to Blair, I think. So there's a lot of overlap there, which provides some really good context. In fact, when we were covering socialism as the ideology, lots of students already knew about the post-war Attlee government and post-war Labour government. So there's a lot of things that come across there, which really help. But there's not so much of an overlap that they'll hurt one another, because I think the writing style for the essays is slightly different, and largely because it's using lots of up-to-date examples in your essays. So it's really keeping abreast of current affairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're very complementary. And as I said, lots of students at the moment are applying to do history and politics at degree level because they really complement each other really well. In fact, another podcast for that one is from a political historian at Cambridge who's Helen Thompson, and it's called These Times. It's a bit like Longview used to be on Radio 4, but much more analytical. So yeah, These Times is fantastic combination of history and politics. So they take a current thing in the news. So a good one was when that new Conservative conference was several months ago. They commented on that, but they looked at the history of conservatism and the Conservative Party and where it came from. So lots of 19th century politics as well. But yeah, there's plenty of overlap, and I think they're very complementary.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I've just this week processed the students' applications to Oxford, and a lot of them have actually applied for history and politics, which is a course that they offer. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Mr. Stamp. That was really informative and very exciting. It's going to be a great year next year for politics globally.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Mrs. Jones now, who's going to give us a presentation about geography. Good evening, Mrs. Jones.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely fine, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, that slide's really boring, so go on to the next one, please. Thank you. This just outlines the course as it's set up. So we recently changed actually to EdXL, which is, in our opinion, much nicer than the one we were doing before. So we're really happy actually with how it's all going. And there are 3 exam papers, and then an independent investigation, or NEA, which is worth 20%. There's a real mix of physical and human, and actually even the physical topics now have a sort of human element. So for example, when you're studying coasts, which is the first one I'll talk about, you do there's lots and lots of links with the human impact on the coasts in terms of things like climate change and managing the risks of climate change. So it's a real mixture spread out over the 2 years. And there's 2 teachers, me and Mr. Toner. Mr. Toner and me. So can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So during the first term, we study coasts and regenerating places. So I've just talked a bit about the coast. So the next slide, please, is regenerating places, which is what I've been doing. And we've had a brilliant time already. We've been out doing some field work in Salisbury and looking at some of the areas of Salisbury that students think might need regenerating, and then linking that in with the new River Park project, which is going on at the moment. So we look at places around the country that have a mixture of, we look at sort of areas that have wealth and areas that are more deprived, and how we can kind of reduce the differences really through regeneration projects. So those 2 topics as well that we study this term form quite a lot of the background for the NEA. We do field work which incorporates both of those things. So that's often quite popular topics for the NEA. So globalization, moving on to the next one. So we look at the sort of concept of globalization and the geographical impacts of globalization, and environmental challenges and things like that as well. And again, there's lots of links with this part of the course with what I've just finished with year 13, which is superpowers. So next slide, please. So tectonics, we don't actually study tectonics at GCSE, so this is always a really popular topic to study again. So lots of students come to Bishop's having studied it at GCSE, but actually our students haven't studied it since year 8. So this is always really popular. We look at the risk of tectonic hazards and then management of disasters in different places around the world. And then next slide, please. So yeah, this is the fieldwork trip. We do 4 days. So usually we try and do 1 day slightly separately. So we'll probably go to Boscombe to do that. And then we had a really successful trip to Devon last year, which is the first time we'd run this trip. We went to Sidmouth and all of the area around there, looking at coastal management, but then we also went into Exeter and did some work there on regeneration, and looked at Princess Hay. So it was a really lovely trip actually. So, and I think the students all enjoyed themselves as well. We had awful weather though. It rained from the minute we got there. It was beautiful when we left in Salisbury, and then it rained from the minute we got there until we left. So that's just fairly standard though, I think. And then we move on to the next year and we look at the water cycle and water insecurity, which Mr. Toner does, which is really, water security is such a huge global issue and becoming more so. So that's just so up to date and relevant. In fact, all bits of the course are up to date and relevant. And just like Ollie was saying, keeping up to date with current affairs is really important. So next slide, please. So superpowers, we look at a really wide range of factors to do with superpowers, and again, loads of links with politics. And I think, although Ollie Stamp and I have talked a little bit about some of the podcasts that we both like to listen to because they're relevant to probably history, politics and geography. So the superpower topic's really interesting. We have talking to the students today actually about keeping an eye on the news over half term. So then next one, please. And I think we're nearly at the end. So carbon cycle, we look at the sort of physical side of it. So I think there's some links here with the biology course, and there's lots of elements of the course which link to increasing energy demand and threats to global climate systems as well. So that again is just so up to date and relevant. And then health, human rights and intervention. So this bit really looks at human development around the world and changing levels of development, and then it covers interventions to do with human rights and trying to raise levels of development around the world. And then we look at the outcomes of geopolitical intervention. So it's really, you know, the things that I teach this year will be different to what I teach next year. It just is changing all the time. And then, so this last bit is just about the independent investigation, which our year 13s are currently working on. So they have field work in the spring, which will give them some ideas of what they might like to do. And then it is completely up to them. They can focus on any element of the course that they've particularly enjoyed. Obviously, there are certain elements or certain areas which are easier to carry out field work in, and so often they will lean more towards coastal management. Lots of them doing things on projects on regeneration, partly because it's interesting, but also partly because there are lots of areas we can get to. You know, it's not too far away for them to visit places where regeneration projects have taken place. So, and they're working on those at the moment. So they collect all their data over the summer, and then when they come back in September, we can really get stuck into doing all the data presentation and analysis, and hopefully, fingers crossed, get it all finished around about Christmas is the plan. So, but we've got plenty of time, and they have, this year we've allocated lesson time for NEA work as well. So they are expected to do a lot in their own time, but they do have some allocated lesson time as well, because it's a big, we just feel it's a big part of the course, and it's nice to be able to give them lesson time as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. On Tuesday, a lot of the subjects talked about Olympiads. Could you explain what an Olympiad is and the remarkable success that your department has had over the last couple of years?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me about that. I nearly forgot to mention it. So there's an International Geography Olympiad, which is held in different locations around the world. And for the last 2 years, some of our students have applied to be part of the UK team. And the first year we did it, Jack and Toby went off to, they were successful and were part of a team of 4 UK students. So there were the 2 of them, I can't remember where the other students were from, and they travelled to Helsinki and met students from all around the world who were competing, and they did really well. and had an amazing time. And then this year they were successful again. So two of our students applied and then made up half of the UK team again this year. And so Anna and Charlotte went to Indonesia this time. So they travelled off in August with the group, and I think it was the two of them and then a student from the Midlands and another student from London. And again, they just had the most fantastic time. And they said that they wouldn't mind where it had been because they had such a good experience, but I do think being in Indonesia was pretty special. And they're still in touch with lots of the other teams from around the world, and I think there's plans to go to Australia to visit the Australian team at some point.
Wow.
So it's been such a good experience for them.
So what sort of things do they actually have to do? Is it a quiz? Is it, it's sort of an exam test type of thing? What do they do?
Well, I think it varies each year, but the application was they had to, I think last year, for example, they had to do a piece of writing about, I think it was impacts of climate change on water supply, I think. So they had to do a sort of essay-based piece for the application. And then while they were in Indonesia, they did all sorts of things as part of the competition. So they had to create a poster. Again, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but they did a range of different activities, and then they had to sort of produce a piece of work as a team. So I think there were sort of quizzes and things as they went through, but the main thing was this one project based on some of the fieldwork they'd done, and they sent photographs through on Instagram, doing fieldwork. Having had our wet, rainy fieldwork in Sidmouth, they were sending photographs of fieldwork in the rainforest in wow. Indonesia. So it was pretty amazing experience. And they have a sort of big award ceremony, and yeah, it's a really big deal actually. So we're really proud of them.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for joining us this evening to talk about geography. Okay, I'm now going to move on to a big department in the arts and humanities, which is religious studies, and the course is philosophy, ethics and theology. To speak to us about it this evening, we have Head of Department, Mrs. Kaur Shahi, and with her is our chaplain, the Reverend Dr Wood as well. So over to you, ladies, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Armstrong. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say a little bit about the course in general, and then the one component that I teach fully, and then I will hand over to Dr Wood to talk about one of her components, and then perhaps say a little bit about the other half of the other component, as it were, and it will become apparent when I actually start explaining about the course. So basically, we do the EduCask A-level course, and it's split into like 3 distinct components, and we have 2 teachers who teach the 3 components, so essentially 1.5 component each. And so it follows that each of those components are 33 1/3%, as it were. And essentially what we've done is we've split the course up, so we have 1.5 components each, and obviously we're teaching to our skills. So I thought what I'd do is I'd say a little bit about one of the components, which is ethics, which I exclusively teach, as it were. And it's an interesting one. The students engage with it really, really well. They look at various ethical theories. We look at ethical language, like what does it actually mean to be good? What does it mean to be bad? What's the difference between right and wrong? How do we assess, whether whether a particular action is right or wrong? And we use a whole host of scholars. And because we use scholars, as it is essentially a humanities subject, what we expect our students to do is to do a lot of reading around these particular scholars, and they're scholars they probably already come across either at GCSE or generally. So we have people like Singer, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, Bentham, and then we have some of the more modern scholars that are still alive and well, like Fletcher and Vardy. So the course is set up in such a way that we encourage our students to think critically, learn how to evaluate, because that's a really essential criteria of writing really good essays, how to present an argument, and not just present an argument, but be able to counter that argument and back it up with evidence and reasons. So, and also to how to actually use those scholars in that evidencing and reasoning. So quite a lot of skills which we try to tease out, not just through essays, as I said, but also through debates. Dr. Wood does a lot of knowledge checks and tests and things like that as well. So all these things lend themselves to ensuring that our students do well at the end of the course. The other two components are philosophy of religion, which I haven't actually started just yet with my year 12. So I thought it might be best to hand over to Dr. Wood, because she's actually started that half of the course. And obviously she does the third part of the course, which is Christianity. So if that's okay, I'll hand over.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I've just started. We've got a really big year 12 class actually. Started with philosophy this year, which is bringing real energy and debate and massive diversity of experience and opinions and faith backgrounds to the group. So if you like a good debate, this is a good course for you. In philosophy at the moment, we are trying to work out whether the classical proofs for God's existence carry any weight whatsoever. So it's straight in there with the analytical thinking. At the moment, we've been looking at the design argument and the cosmological argument as to whether everything has to have a cause, and so whether there must be an ultimate cause behind that. Looking at Islamic theories as well as Christian theories, and of course non-religious theories altogether, and some really sparky, quirky philosophers who just reject the whole thing. So it's a chance for you to put yourself within that debate and begin to learn to analyse and put together logical arguments there. Would you like me to carry on with the theology paper, Mrs. Corr?
That's okay. I'll unless Miss Armstrong has some questions. I mean, I can say a little bit more about the sorts of books perhaps students could read.
Yeah, please
and
do.
various
That'd
other
be
things.
great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've produced a booklet which we would give out to new students that they can peruse over the summer before they actually join the course. But in terms of light reading or light watching, they could read something like Sophie's World, which was written by a guy called Garder. The Good Place on Netflix. That's pretty good to watch. There's quite a lot of ethics in that, for example. Lots of podcasts out there. The BBC produced some really good ones. There's one called Sweet Reason. I mean, we use so many different forms of media to, you know, and clips from Friends and things like that, you know, anything to sort of make the subject very, very engaging and sort of rooted in modern problems. And I just wanted to say, given the, you know, sort of the politics or the geopolitics at the moment, in ethics, we do a lot of applied ethics, which is where we actually look at certain problems and try and apply those as ethical theories to what's going on around the world. So things like war, use of nuclear weapons, immigration, abortion. There's a whole host of topics which take place in the third component of ethics.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Wood, would you like to say a bit about the theology paper?
Oh, yes, thank you. So the third component is theology, and you're probably wondering what on earth is that? It is the most gloriously broad topic. It goes alongside English A-level really nicely because there's some textual work. We spend a goodly dose of about half a term digging down to try and see, if you try to go back to the historical man Jesus of Nazareth, who on earth was he? What did he get up to? That's a really intriguing, quite political actually, module there. And then we come right up to date as well, as we look at interfaith issues. We look at women in religion and the sort of patriarchal side of faith that has been there through history, and whether faith is inevitably patriarchal or not. We look at wealth and we look at ideologies. So many of our students will study this subject alongside politics, history, English, maths sometimes. And if you're a great mathematician, you do great logic. So the two there also fit really nicely together. The other thing that Bishop Wordsworth students have that I don't think any other school in the country would have is access to Sarum College Library, which is about 90 seconds walk from our back gate. That's a postgraduate level research library, and you'll be able to do projects in there, and that looks absolutely cracking on your UCAS statement, to be able to show just how university ready you are. And some of their speakers will come over to talk to Bishop students as well. So a wonderful opportunity to engage with people in cutting edge research.
Fantastic, thank you very much. A couple of things really. How many students take philosophy, ethics and theology?
In the last sort of 2 to 3 years, actually, we've had somewhere between 17 and 25 students each year. So yeah, very popular. In year 13, we have 2 classes at the moment.
Okay, fantastic. So really strong numbers.
Absolutely.
And could you talk a little bit about the co-curricular activities that the department do? Do you go out on trips and visits? Is there, I think there's a philosophy club, is there, or is that not for sixth form? Yeah, right.
We have a very active philosophy club, which I started initially with 2 religious studies prefects, but I've actually got 3 or 4 of them working on the philosophy club. It's popular across all the year groups. Given that we've only just come back, probably just by the time we get into the new year, we'll probably have to split the club up into lower and middle school, and then the sixth form, and maybe the year 11s would join the sixth form. So it's extremely popular. So that's one thing that we do in school. In terms of other activities, we try every year to try and take our students out on some kind of philosophy talk, conference type thing. Failing that, if we're, because it was a little bit difficult during the COVID years and we're only just getting back on track. If failing that, there's loads of online courses and things that we signpost our students to, so they can watch those or attend like mini conferences and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, ladies. That was really informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, last but in no means least, very large department in school. Mr. Kerr, are you ready, please?
I am ready. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. To talk to us about business and economics. Thank you. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Andy Kerr. I'm head of business and economics at Bishop's. It's myself, Mrs. Jessica Barber. If I could go to the next slide, if possible. And again, and again. One more, if possible. There we go. So, I mean, for many people, business, but of course, economics will be brand new. So what I've tried to do here is, explain why it might be a good idea to consider studying these subjects. So, analytical, numerical, problem-solving skills are necessary for both subjects, and of course, following the course of these subjects, there's a fair amount of steady, buoyant demand in the economy for people with the skills that they develop after A-level, and in some cases after degree as well. So, I mean, this is from the University of London, and of course we have a global city in the form of London that's very much predicated on business and finance. If I could go to the next slide. And so what I've also tried to show here is the sorts of, the market really is dictating, what sort of degrees are becoming very, very popular here. And the arrows point to all of the topics related to both economics and business. And so you can see there that they're becoming ever more popular. Not that, and if I go to the next one, not the sole reason for choosing an A-level, in my opinion, but a lot of other pupils do ask me which graduates earn the most and all this fun stuff. And you can see there that economics has been climbing the ranks steadily for some time now. We live in an era of big data, and a good degree in economics develops econometric skills that help with data analysis, which a lot of big corporations require nowadays. So it's probably worth noting as well that a significant proportion of the pupils who leave us after A-levels do go on to study subjects that are related to both A-levels. And so anything with business or finance or management, you know, I did a quick check, and it is becoming and has been a significant number as well. In terms of what we have within the department, well, we've got 2 sets per subject at A-level. These numbers are a wee bit lower than we have at the moment. Our average set size for economics is about 17 now, and we're growing steadily in business too. So it is a growing department, and it's growing nationally as well at a fair old clip. I think over the last 10 years, study of both subjects has increased by over 20%. So, and we're following in the same trajectory. Naturally, lots of people ask me what the difference is, and the way I like to explain this is that most people will be studying science at GCSE, and therefore they have a feel for what chemistry is and what biology is. And so the way I like to describe it is that economics is more like chemistry and business is more like biology. And what I mean by that is that, and I'm going back a number of years now to O-level chemistry, that in chemistry you might talk about moles and ions and things that connect chemicals, but you can't actually see them and feel them. And so in economics we use theoretical models that for some people can be somewhat challenging. Business, on the other hand, you can see in front of you on a daily basis. If you follow people on X or Twitter or Threads, you know, even if you pick up a newspaper, you can see business happening in front of you. The same does go for economics as well, but the models we use in economics are more mathematically based, and it's slightly more academic. The other big question, if I could just go back one more time, is can I take both at Bishop's? And the answer is yes, but you can see there that I've put in bold letters, but. We would, first of all, I would like to talk to people, or I'd like someone who's interested in studying both to talk to someone at the school. It is possible to study both, but I think you've got to be quite certain about what you want to do after you leave Bishop's. It does reduce your opportunities if you wish to go to university somewhat, but you will not be denied a place at university if you are going to study a business or economics related degree. And economics is a new subject, and so for many of you, you may not have tried it or looked into it. And so it's definitely worth considering and having a conversation about that. But we do offer it if people are quite certain about what they want to do. Next slide, please. We follow the specification, the NXL specification for both subjects. And so I don't want to do too much of a deep dive here, but broadly speaking, economics is split into 2 large areas, microeconomics and macroeconomics. Both subjects are split into 4 easily contained themes, themes 1 and 2 for year 12 and themes 3 and 4 for year 13. If we could go to the next slide. What we do with business is we literally split a business into its constituent components and look at each of those departments' functions individually and do a deeper dive into different areas. We also look at the external environment, and there's a small amount of overlap with economics in this area. And then in year 13, what we do is take what we've learned in year 12 and apply it to a global context, and also look at some of the theories that would be further developed at degree level and apply them. And in both subjects, the exams are really focused to a certain extent on what the Harvard Business School created with the case study driven assessment. And so being able to apply the knowledge learned to a specific real live case study is crucial, and again is a skill that can be taken into the workplace. Next slide, please. In terms of the sorts of issues that we cover in the course, we look at monopoly power, and right now Google and Amazon are in courts on both sides of the Atlantic for antitrust measures. I know Amazon, I think the FTC in the United States wants to break them up. So we look from both an economic and a business standpoint what that would mean. Next slide, please. The impact of sugar taxes, and just a whole list of things. Universal basic income on the next slide, and what can we do in terms of climate change and what are businesses doing around that. So there are a number of different issues. What I'd also like to do, if I've got time, I think I have time. I'm frequently asked this question by parents and pupils, and is economics more academically rigorous? Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, it is. Some of the frameworks and models that we use do take a wee bit of understanding. The demands of the language in order to gain higher grades in economics is a little bit more rigorous as well. And linked with this is the next question. Do Russell Group universities recognize business as an acceptable A-level? Well, yes. Yes, they do. I've taught pupils who've gone on to Oxbridge interviews and gone on to study at Oxford with business as one of their A-levels. So they haven't gone on to Oxford to study business, but they've gone on to study geography, for instance, and business is one of their A-levels. So it is accepted. And then finally, I think it's really, really important that people who study either one or both of these subjects do have an intrinsic interest in what's going on in the real world. Your essay responses in the exam are going to be greatly enhanced if you're able to see what's going on within the real world context, and you can apply that to the models and theories that you've learned throughout the course. And that's it. I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kerr. We actually had a couple of questions come in. How many students do you have taking economics and how many taking business studies each year?
So, I mean, we're growing. I think we've got 38 in economics right now, and I think we've got 19 in business.
Right. Okay. And do you teach economics and somebody else teaches? Who's involved with the teaching of these subjects?
So it's myself, mainly economics, and I mean, I'm doing most of the so we're splitting it now. So Mrs. Barber is teaching the year 12 micro course, but in year 13 it will be all me, because Mrs. Barber does GCSE business as well. So it's 2/3 me, plus Mrs. Barber in economics, and then it's probably 50-50 A-level business, and then Mrs. Barber does all the GCSE.
Okay, thank you very much. Just something that lots of students are a little bit concerned about. If they want to study economics at university, should they have mathematics as another A-level?
Yes. Yeah. So if you would like a degree certificate that simply says economics, nothing else, not economics and history, not economics and politics, then you need a very strong A-level in maths, because if you were to go to a Russell Group university to study pure economics, you've learned quite a few of the models that you will use when you get to university. And so you will go over those models again, but very shortly after that, you will begin applying a subset of mathematics called econometrics to these models in a real world context. And so it's a very maths driven degree now because of the requirements of what the economy needs. You know, we live in an era of big data, which I think I mentioned earlier, and if you can apply those skills, then there are jobs out there for you. So yeah, it's now that shouldn't preclude people from studying economics without maths, because you can, you know, you can study economics and history. There's huge overlaps in economics with geography as well. So parts of economics and geography. So you could go on to do a geography degree, and your A-level in economics would certainly enhance that too.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. That's great, and I'm sure there'll be lots of interest on our open evening. So I'm going to wrap up now. I'm just going to check the Q&A. There are actually, Mr. Kerr, a couple of others if you're still there.
I'm here.
Great. Two questions, please. Which GCSEs are required to take business studies at A-level? And then if you could also take the entry requirements for economics, is there a minimum maths requirement, please?
7 in maths and English for economics. The stronger you are in maths, the more comfortable you're going to feel with the models. With what the government did to us this year at GCSE, there's been, I've been somewhat more flexible with business, but essentially we're looking for 6s in maths and English for business. So, yeah.
So six in maths and English for business, 7 in maths and English language for economics.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we've now had no new questions come in. As was stated at the beginning, our next big open event is Thursday, the 2nd of November. There's no need to book for this, and if you'd like to come along, all our teachers, all the staff that you've spoken to and heard from this evening will be available for you to ask more questions. There'll be information sheets that you can read about the detail of what's involved in the course, so you can have a look at that in greater depth and decide if it's for you. So there'll be representatives from all our clubs and societies, the sports department, and as I say, the content from both webinars, the teachers and staff will be available that evening to talk to you and answer any further questions that you have. So I wish you all a very good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.